by Scott Redding this morning. Scott Redding might have set that fastest lap, but it was Toprak Razgatlioglu who won this morning's Superpole race just over 2 hours ago. Now he sets off in pursuit of his first World SBK hat-trick. Damage limitation in San Juan so far for Jonathan Rea, but 4 podium finishes of any kind will now be enough for Razgatlioglu to claim the title. Steve English alongside me. Rea's brought home a second and a third this weekend so far. We're now heading back to territory where only misfortune for Toprak will deny him the 2021 title.
34 points the difference, and the difference between those two riders has been Toprak's consistently been able to get it done in the races over the course of this year. Jonathan Rea has had an advantage in terms of single lap pace. We saw that with that string of pole positions at the start of the season, but really over the course of the last 4 or 5 rounds we've seen Toprak eke into the single lap pace. He's always had that consistency during the races. He hasn't made any mistakes through the course of this year, and that's why he's been able to open up that 34-point lead. 4
podiums, even if their third positions will be enough for Razgatlioglu to take the title. He's not just going to settle for that though, is he? He's going to be looking for the treble today.
Toprak said all the way through this weekend the focus for him is to win 3 races. He's not thinking about the championship. He wants to have his first ever hat-trick in World SBK.
Reminder of the results from the Superpole race earlier on today. Toprak Razgatlioglu victorious. 2 races now this weekend in which he's taken 5 points out over Jonathan Rea. Rea restricted to third this morning, with Scott Redding taking second place. The second row of the grid will be occupied by Axel Bassani. Dry weather, best performance for him, P4, ahead of Michael van der Mark and Andrea Locatelli. Good result for van der Mark, that. Garrett Gerloff on the third row of the grid with Michael Ruben Rinaldi and Leon Haslam. Unfortunately, Alex Lowe's is withdrawn from this afternoon's action, so still proving too soon for his return from that right-hand injury.
Yeah, speaking of Lowe's, obviously disappointed not to be able to take the start here on the Sunday race, but we did see him struggle in the closing stages of the Superpole race. 10-lap race, very different to the 21-lap race, and Lowe's and Kawasaki making that decision to withdraw him from this afternoon's outing. Obviously we saw him have to be withdrawn from Portimao and the Sunday in Jerez as well, so it does just show the extent of that injury that he's had over the course of the last couple of weeks.
Yes, the riders who were in the top 9 in the Superpole race were the same top 9 who finished in the Superpole session. Yeah, I'll get that out eventually. Which means that Lowe's absence is the only change from 10th position down. It's now the only change, of course, from 9th position down. Haslam moving up 1. Vinales, Laverty, Davies, Mercado, Bautista, Cavalieri will be the new order further back. As for the championship top 2, Toprak Razgatlioglu now 34 points clear of Jonathan Rea. Another 10 points gained this weekend so far.
Yeah, and a lot of work to be done for Rea and for Kawasaki. You can see him down there in the pit box. Parariba, Fabian Fare down there trying to figure out a plan, and they need a plan because, as we saw in the Superpole race, Jonathan Rea had no answers for Scott Redding or for Toprak Razgatlioglu. After the race, Redding said that Rea said that he was struggling with that rear tyre to get it up to temperature. We'll see if that's still the case in this longer race. What is going to be interesting is Jonathan Rea in the Superpole race opted for that softer front tyre. He made a change compared to what he had done in yesterday's race. We'll wait and see whether or not he opts for the same tyre in this afternoon's 21-lap race, because obviously for Jonathan Rea, he's always liked that harder front tyre, a little bit stiffer in its construction, really allows him to force his way into corners.
Yes, the SC1 tyre proving the tyre of choice for Jonathan Rea here yesterday. To be perfectly honest though, whether he goes for the tyre he went for yesterday or whether he goes for the tyre he went for this morning, in neither case did he beat Toprak.
And I don't think he's got the answer for Toprak. Certainly all the way through this weekend, Toprak's had those couple of tenths of a second in hand, and he's been really strong from first free practice session. He led all 3 free practice sessions. So only Scott Redding ahead of him in the Superpole session, and we saw in yesterday's race just how strong and consistent Toprak was. I'm really keen though to see what this man Scott Redding can do in the feature length race. He crashed out of the leading group on the opening lap in the opening corner yesterday. His pace after that was really impressive. He was able to come through the field, finish inside the top 10. Let's see what he can do if he's able to have a clean run all the way through.
He does look like being the one man who could potentially take the fight to Razgatlioglu. We saw them finish less than a tenth of a second apart in this morning's Superpole race.
Yeah, and we saw at the end of that race that Redding really got close to the back of Toprak in that final sector and put himself into a position to try and use the slipstream to try and win the run to the line. Wasn't able to get close enough for that, but certainly as it is right now for Scott Redding, he's going to feel that he's going to have a chance in this race.
Yes, Redding starts from P2, the position of course in which he finished finished this morning. Confirmation along the bottom of your screen here. Alex Lowe's unable to take his place in this afternoon's racing. As we said, he missed 4 races previously, so this is going to be another miss for him. Of course, that's bad news for KRT as a whole.
Yeah, and certainly for Lowe's having missed the Sunday in Jerez and then the both days racing in Portimao. It's a big shame for him. You can see him down there in the pit box with Florian Marino as well. And certainly for Lowe's, he'll view this as a missed opportunity. He'll certainly feel he's riding well during the course, the triple headers. Every time he was out on the bike, he was running up there inside the top 4 or 5 spots. And in yesterday's race, did a really good job to finish 4th. Just a little bit too much of an ask to race back to back.
Yeah, saw him dropping gradually backwards here yesterday and earlier on this morning. And that is unfortunate for Alex Lowe's, not least because the injury itself came at a bad time with the triple header, of course. Only 1 week's break and then straight out here to Argentina, still proving just a little bit too soon for him to make his return. Toprak Razgatlioglu still all smiles, P1 on the grid. The one thing missing from his accolades, the one thing missing from his account is to take 3 wins out of 3 in a single weekend.
Yeah, obviously we saw Magny Corey came pretty close to that and was given a penalty that eventually took one of those race victories away from him. But for Toprak, he knows this is his chance to do that. He said earlier in the season that the goal was to turn second place finishes into race victories, and then as the season progressed, it was let's try and make it a hat-trick, and that became the target really for him from mid-season onwards. He was able to get close to it in Magny Corey, wants to get the job done now.
Yes, of course, for Toprak Razgatlioglu came as so close, in fact, in Manicor that there'll even be some archive commentary of 3 wins out of 3 and a triple win for Toprak Razgatlioglu, because at the time that he completed his 3rd race crossing the checkered flag and the finish line first in Manicor, we still thought that he had done the triple. That Superpole race eventually and later taken away from him. Axel Bassani we saw there, trending in the right direction this weekend. 5th in race 1, 4th in the Superpole race. What can he do from the second row of the grid?
Yeah, he was on the front row of the grid after the Superpole session as well, so it's been genuine pace all the way through this weekend for Axel Bassani. We'll see if he's able to try and come away with a podium. Seems a big ask for him, but if he's able to come away with a top 5 finish, I think that'll be a really good result. Points
to target here for Tati Mercado, 2 16th places for him. He's the home rider, which is why he's the focus of the lenses this weekend. The Argentinian fans certainly cheering him every time his name's mentioned around here, but Mercado's not had the best of weekends.
No, not the best weekends for Tati, and it's a shame because he came here in really good form. This is a track, of course, for the MIE squad that they wouldn't have any data with this generation of bike, and they've made a lot of changes to that bike all the way through this season as well. So you come into a new track like this effectively into the unknown, and it is a big challenge for any team.
Yes, Tati Mercado then will be aiming to put points on the board here this afternoon. He gains 1 position, of course, on the grid as a result of the withdrawal of Alex Lowe's. We're down to 20 riders here in San Juan, and 3 of them are Argentinian because there are 2 replacement riders towards the back of the order. This is Chaz Davies. He too has had a difficult weekend so far.
Yeah, it's been an up and down weekend for Chaz. He's had some decent pace at different times, but here in San Juan, it is a challenge to hook it all up all the way through, and we saw in the Superpole race didn't quite have the performance to get himself into the top 9 spots, and for Davis it's going to mean coming through from 12th on the grid now. It's a big task. We'll see if he's able to have a strong result. Obviously for Chaz it's a big weekend just to come back after that rib injury, and obviously he'll have another month to further that recovery and get ready for what will be his final round as a World SBK rider.
Yes, Davis saying last night that he is suffering from that rib injury. He's not got the kind of fitness that he would have had if he had the regular bike time that the others have had. Bear in mind they had 3 rounds in the last 4 weeks prior to this weekend, and that's the one thing is bike time that Davies is lacking.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations, and Lowe's and Davis both found that the golden rule during the triple header, don't get yourself injured at the start of it, and for both of those riders it's obviously put them on the back foot for the last 2 rounds, that Davis having to sit out the action when Loris Baz took his bike, and then both of them clearly still with a little bit of work to do to get themselves back to full fitness.
Yes, the consolation for both is a nice long break now, but before the Indonesian round at the end of the season.
Yeah, and Indonesia in a month's time, that's going to be the last round of the year, and Toprak's not going to be able to wrap up the championship in this race. But if he has a good result here, he'll give himself the opportunity to do that as early as possible in Indonesia.
Yes, he'll be hoping to do it as early as race 1, although earlier on this season he was talking in terms of wanting it to be a memorable title battle that went down to the final bend of the final lap of the final race. I think he might be reviewing that right now. He's 34 points up, and the man who looks most likely to seal the crown.
Yeah, you can see there Taddy getting a lot of support there from the marshals as he leaves pit lane, and certainly everyone around this Villicombe circuit that's come here to cheer on Taddy. Want to see him have a good result, come away with some decent points in this race. It's been a tough weekend up to this point for the home hero.
Yes, we saw one of the fans earlier on waving a makeshift board with a message on it saying it's Mother's Day and I'm choosing to spend it here. So there's certainly been a lot of flower sellers out and around in San Juan today. This is their day to make hay, and Tati Mercado will be hoping that he too can give those who've attended today, despite perhaps the wishes of their mothers, something to cheer about.
I want to make it perfectly clear, it's not Mother's Day in Ireland. I haven't focused on superbikes for all of them, my mammy, but you'd have to say for all these riders, they're focusing on what's important now. A 21 lap race around this track is going to be a challenge for everyone. We saw in yesterday's race that they were all able to manage their tyres really well. It was a big surprise, I think, to an awful lot of the field to see just how consistent they could be in terms of their pace through the course of 21 laps. We didn't have a big drop off in tyre, even though everyone's out there on the super soft compound tyres, and it really was impressive work from Pirelli, and also you have to say from the organisers here. They've done a great job to get this track into great condition, and all of the riders, after the problems we had here a couple of years ago, obviously would have been a little bit sceptical coming here. Every single one of them very positive about what's happened over the course of this weekend.
Yes, riders were positive just looking at the circuit on Thursday. I had my concerns after the sandstorm on Thursday afternoon, but a clear line very quickly emerged over the course of Friday morning, 10 or so minutes, and since then we've had some fantastic pace set by all of the field.
Yeah, and it's been an impressive pace from a lot of riders. We saw at the end of yesterday's race a lot of riders in the final 4 or 5 laps able to set their fastest laps. We actually saw in the Superpole race this morning Michael van der Mark, who ended up in 5th spot, able to set his fastest lap in the last lap, so he's going to feel pretty good on that BMW.
Michael van der Mark, who will be starting from 5th position. The camera just making its way past him now. That's the gap that van der Mark's got to try and recover to the 3 riders on the front row of the grid. Jonathan Rea on the left of the camera. Then we pass Scott Redding, who lines up P2. And the main man himself, Toprak Razgatlioglu, your championship leader. 2 wins out of 2 this weekend in San Juan. This has always been a kind circuit to him. And he'll be feeling it's even kinder if he can make it 3 wins out of 3. He leads by 34 World Championship points.
Yeah, you're not going to bet against it. Toprak's been so fast, so consistent, and so confident all the way through this weekend. He's done a great job of just being able to focus at the task at hand. And the task at hand for him is just to try and win this race and win as many races as possible between now and the end of the season. He's definitely taken the approach, the easiest way to win a world championship, pick up as many race wins as you possibly can.
6 podiums out of 7 races here in San Juan. 2 of them race victories, of course, this weekend, and he's homing in on Jonathan Rea's outstanding record around this venue. Rea has 4 times been a winner at 7 podiums out of 7 in his case. Rea starts from P3 today. Between the 2 of them, this man Scott Redding. Now Redding was less than a 1/10 of a second away from victory earlier on today. He was actually a race leader coming around turns 6 and 7 on the final lap. That's just how close he got to dethroning Toprak Razgatlioglu from P1 in the Superpole race. And if anything, you'd fancy Redding's chances even more over the longer race distance.
Yeah, I think for Scott Redding, he's going to know that he's got the opportunity to bring that fight to Razgatlioglu. We saw in the 10-lap race he had good pace all the way through it, and given what we saw in yesterday's race, to come through the field, make those overtaking moves and still set good times at the end of that race, he's definitely going to feel that there's an opportunity here for him.
Yes, crash at turn 1 for Scott Redding in race 1, dropped him to the back of the field, fought his way all the way up into 9th position, and it was a highly entertaining race actually. We were watching various riders coming through, and Michael Ruben Rinaldi was also among them, so Ducati's able to push on through the order when they need to. Toprak Razgatlioglu, you saw there receiving his latest watch. They're becoming a little bit more commonplace these days. It's only the 2nd time this season, though, that he's won a Superpole race. He has improved in terms of his Superpole form as well on Saturday mornings. 2nd row of the grid, Axel Bassani, Michael van der Mark and Andrea Locatelli. Bassani going from strength to strength. He was 3rd in the Superpole session. He was 4th in the Superpole race earlier on this morning, 5th here yesterday. It's been a consistent weekend for the youngster.
Yeah, it's been a very impressive weekend all the way through. He's had good pace in the free practice sessions, good pace in the Superpole session, and able to have good results in the races as well. It's been a real eye-opener all the way through the season from him, and he's been able to maintain that form all the way through.
Much has generally been the case throughout the season, though it's not going to be easy for Bassani to add to that single podium that he scored at race 1 of the Catalunya round in tricky and treacherous track conditions. He finished second on that occasion. He starts from 4th here today. This is Jonathan Rea. He's up in 3rd position on the grid after back-to-back podium finishes for him this weekend. As I said, he has been a winner here in San Juan on 4 occasions. Really needs to make it 5 if he wants to try and narrow that gap. 10 points Toprak Razgatlioglu has gained on him this weekend so far. The gap is up at 34.
Yeah, 34 points is a big margin for Jonathan Rea. Very different to any of his other championship challenges. Obviously 6 in a row for Rea. It's always going to come to an end for any rider. It really does look like it's Toprak's championship to lose at this stage. But we've seen it through the course of this season. Mistakes can happen for riders. Mistakes can happen for teams. And you certainly can't take anything for granted in World SBK 2021.
The difference between the modern era and world titles that have seen big margins gained and lost in short spaces of time. Attrition is a lot less these days in the modern era, and particularly with riders of the capacity of Toprak Razgatlioglu and Jonathan Rea. 34 points are going to be hard won if Rea is to do it this season. Alongside Axel Bassani on the 2nd row of the grid, then we return to Michael van der Mark. Now, van der Mark too has had a decent weekend. He was 7th in the Superpole session, 6th in race 1, 5th in the Superpole race. He's going in the right direction.
Yeah, and really relaxed there on the grid for van der Mark as well, and it's been an impressive weekend for BMW. Good to see them come away with those two top 6 finishes from van der Mark in the races so far.
Andrea Locatelli, by contrast, hasn't had the best of weekends, I would suggest. His form from Assen round 5 all the way, to be honest, to Portugal last time out when he had a podium in race 2 has been superb. Rarely been out of the top 5 positions, hasn't been in the top 5 positions this weekend. 6th on the grid in the Superpole session, 8th in race 1, 6th in the Superpole race this morning.
Yeah, first time here in Argentina for him, and it is a tough technical racetrack to learn, and maybe taking a little bit longer to get up to speed here compared to some of the other tracks that he's had to visit for a first time since joining the Superbike paddock last year in the Supersport class.
3rd row of the grid, Garrett Gerloff, Michael Ruben Rinaldi and Leon Haslam. Gerloff, who's got his girlfriend back in his pit box this weekend, feels more comfortable within himself over the course of this round, and it has shown. He was able to make up a few positions in race 1 yesterday, a battling effort after losing ground on the opening lap. 8th in the Superpole session, 7th in race 1 and 7th in the Superpole race. The crowd on their feet as we build up towards this race 2 and towards the national anthem here in Argentina. But we'll continue to give you the information as to the lineup on the starting order. Garrett Gerloff on row 3 alongside Michael Ruben Rinaldi and Leon Haslam. Decent performance so far, as I said, from Gerloff, 2 7th places.
Yeah, we saw at the end of yesterday's race, Gerloff really fast. He was only a couple of tenths of a second slower than the fastest lap of the race in the penultimate lap yesterday, so he's got good potential at the end of the races. We'll see if he's able to make good use of that 3rd row of the grid slot.
Garrett Gerloff, as I said, 8th in the Superpole session. Needs to get off to a better start. That's been the critical difference between his most successful and his least successful races this season. Alongside Gerloff on P8 is Michael Ruben Rinaldi, podium finisher, of course, in race 1 here yesterday. Didn't have the same kind of fortune in the Superpole race. The shorter distance not favouring him. Should be better off here this afternoon.
Yeah, for Rinaldi, we saw obviously in yesterday's race, the second half of that race, was able to make really good progress, set some fast times. We'll see if he can do the same in this one. It is going to be very tough for him, though, to match that podium pace, because his teammate Scott Redding has been a step above him over the course this weekend so far.
Yes, only 9th in the Superpole session yesterday morning, so actually the fact that he starts from P8, it's 1 position higher. This is Tati Mercado, the man they've all come to see. Well, if they were on their feet swiftly at the beginning of the build-up to this race, they'll be on their feet if Tati Mercado can make a couple of overtakes from P13 on the grids.
Yeah, the target for Tati has to be just to finish inside the top 10, but it's going to be a tough task for him because the likes of Chaz Davis in front of him, Isaac Vinales as well on that 4th row of the grid. Vinales has actually had a really good weekend here in Argentina, was running inside the top 10 in the free practice sessions and has qualified well, and he's going to start from 10th on the grid in this race.
Yes, the Argentinian fans certainly enjoying themselves. Brings an extra dimension to the racing here in San Juan. Not only have there always been good spectator numbers since our first visit in 2018, but there's plenty of off-track programs as well of entertainment for those fans. Leon Haslam starts from P9. He's one of the main beneficiaries of the absence of Alex Lowes. He moves up onto the third row of the grid, and as far as Leon Haslam is concerned, 2 10th places thus far. It's been a generally disappointing and difficult weekend for Honda.
Yeah, and certainly for Honda it has been a tough one, considering that the previous 3 or 4 rounds they've been so competitive, obviously with Alvaro Bautista able to come away with podium finishes, and really strong in Portimao as well last time out. For Honda this has been a lot tougher.
Row 4, Isaac Viñales, Eugene Laverty and Chaz Davies. Viñales hasn't had the rub of the green, really. He qualified well, 11th position in the Superpole session, retired with a technical problem in race 1 and was down in 17th position at the checkered flag earlier on this morning. So Viñales with some work to do, but we know from Friday as well that he's got some pace.
Yeah, had a crash in this morning's warm-up session as well, but for Viñales, he has had good pace all the way through the weekend. Starting from 10th on the grid, if he's able to come away with a top 10 finish, it's a good result for him.
Alongside Viñales on row 4, Eugene Laverty and Chaz Davies. Laverty into his 3rd weekend now as a substitute rider for the absent Tom Sykes. Laverty picked up 3 points from race 1. He qualified better than he's been able to race so far this weekend, down in 15th position in the Superpole race, never really a contender for the top 9. Yeah,
and it has been a little bit tougher for Eugene over the race distances since he came back on that bike, but we have seen him able to qualify all right, and obviously on that 4th row of the grid, if he's able to make a good start, he might be able to give himself a chance of staying in the front of that 3rd group that we've seen develop over the course of this weekend. Probably doesn't have the same pace as those guys inside the top 8 positions.
And particularly in the long runs, laps 9 or 10, that his pace began to drop off yesterday, and he will be keen to push on forward. Starts P11. This is Chaz Davies, who completes that 4th row of the grid from P12. He is still struggling with that rib injury. He's only got 4 races left in World SBK, so he doesn't want to miss any of them. He's still got 3 to come in Indonesia as he looks to add to his podium tally.
Yeah, and certainly for Chaz, it's a tough ask to see him do it today. Probably can't see that being too likely, but for him the target is get yourself ready for that final round in Indonesia and try and sign off with a bit of style. He's obviously had some good last round heroics over the last few years as well, obviously winning in race 2 last year in Portimao to close out his season. He'd certainly settle for a podium to end his season.
5th row of the grid then, Tati Mercado, who we've already seen, this man Alvaro Bautista and Samuele Cavalieri. Bautista, retirement from race 1, 11th position earlier on today, came through nicely but couldn't land a blow on teammate Leon Haslam, so he goes all the way back to 15th position, and remember that that's where he qualified in the Superpole session here yesterday. After being promoted by Alex Lowes' absence, he goes to P14. Samuele Cavalieri rounds out the 5th row of the grid, 2 points for him in race 1 on that Barney Ducati, but it could have been so much more as far as Cavalieri was concerned. Passed Eugene Laverty for 11th before a gearbox problem that dropped him to 14th in the closing stages.
Yeah, real shame for Sammy, because he had looked really strong in that race compared to where we've seen the Barney Ducati over the course of this year.
Kota Nazane, who scored a single point in race 1 yesterday, 14th position in the Superpole race this morning, so still hovering around the fringes of the top 15. 20 rider field, might have hoped for more than that.
Yeah, Kota obviously confirmed for next year with GRT, and that's where the pressure really comes to step on from where he's been this season. It's been a tough campaign for him, a few flashes of what he could do. Catalunya, he looked good, but it's been a tough campaign for the Japanese rider.
Alongside Kota Nazane on row 6, Tito Rabat and Christophe Ponsard, and then 2 Argentinian riders towards the back of the order. There have been a couple of seconds lap off the pace, to be perfectly honest, of the nearest riders around them, although they have had good scraps among themselves, because one finished ahead of the other in race 1 and they finished the other way round in the Superpole race, so some local interest at very least in that, with 3 Argentinians on the grid for this weekend. The Motul Argentinian round, as we've said, always a popular event with the fans, and it'll be interesting to see whether Toprak Razgatlioglu can make history, becoming only the 3rd rider to win 3 races in a single weekend.
Yeah, popular one for the fans, for the paddock, and certainly for the Paddy Yamaha team this weekend so far. Toprak loves this place. He had good results here in the Kawasaki. He's had great results here on the Yamaha this week.